What's up, everybody, and welcome back to episode 3 of the Grandmaster Plan, the Gwent City podcast. Today we're joined by some new guests to the show. Say what's up to Back to Kill. Why don't you give us a little intro about yourself?
Hello guys, my name is Back to Kill. I'm a member of Gwent City for probably nearly 1 year now. I was introduced to Gwent at the beginning of the closed beta. I received my invite because I was addicted to Gwent in The Witcher 3, like probably most of us.
Awesome, nice. And other guests today, our first incoming out of the team guest. This man needs no introduction. Swim, how you doing today?
Oh, hello. I'm good. Shoot. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And also we have Randy back again
Right.
with a webcam this time.
Yes.
All right, looking good, Randy. Looking good. So, Swim, man, let's get it kicked off. How did you get into Gwent? Actually, I don't know much about that.
Moi. Yeah. No, that's a question that a lot of people ask me as soon as they find out that I've never played the Witcher games. I had a thing for card games, I guess. I always like to play all these new card games, and it's great because, of course, in the last couple of years, dev studios have just been pumping out card games like it's nobody's business for some reason. And I guess Soundboard was telling me this Gwent game was cool, and I was like, sure, I'll give it a try. And it turns out it's the only one of the last several years that's not just Hearthstone with a twist. So that was kind of neat, and I stuck with it.
Wow. So you guys hear that? Thanks, Soundboard, for giving us Swim.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's weird. A lot of people say they come from The Witcher, but yeah, I'm the same way. Never played it. Just jump ship from old Hearthstone.
Yep.
But anyway, so Swim, man, you have some exciting news coming up. You will be part of the Challenger kind of production team as their new analyst.
Yeah, I'm going to be analyzing things left and right.
So I think a lot of people are curious, man, how that's gonna work. Like, are you doing after the game or?
I'm curious too, man.
Oh, so they haven't even
Yeah.
told you then?
No, I have no idea. I'm just gonna show up there and they're gonna be like, we'll just wing it. It'll be fine then.
So that's cool though. So what kind of draws you to do this sort of casting analyst sort of thing? Because I've heard you talk in the past saying that you kind of prefer casting.
Oh, you mean you mean towards being an analyst or towards being like a more competitive player?
Right. Like, why do you kind of enjoy more of the kind of analyzing casting role instead of competing?
That's a fantastic question. So I think for most people who are listening, that a lot of people these days probably don't regard me as a competitive player. It's only anyone who's been playing for like a really long time since closed beta that will remember that I started streaming because I was like a top player at the time. But since then, getting into streaming and YouTubing and writing guides and being a very active member of the Gwentleman organization, it turns out that those things take an exorbitant amount of time. And I find myself, it's hard to fit in the time to like really grind and try to like stay sharp and stay competitive. So it feels to me like it's just easier to slot it with kind of like casting and analyzing, and I would rather just kind of at least be present at every event,
Right. Yeah. I mean, competing, I'm sure Randy can tell us, just takes a huge time commitment and it's super tough.
People forget that, absolutely. And a lot of people look at me and on my stream and I'm just like a chill dude playing a card game for 6 hours, and so I don't really seem like a busy person. But the reality of the situation couldn't be any further from that.
Cool, yeah. Well, congratulations again on that. And speaking of Challenger, we'll go ahead and take a look at that right now. I've got some sick graphics to pull up. Bam! There you go. Your Challenger competitors. So we got Life Coach, Shaggy, Jorah, Freddy Babes, Tailbot, Game King, Adzakov, and Coleman. So Randy, you've kind of been in the Gwent competitive scene, making it to Gwent Slam, competing really hard on the ladder. What do you think about this lineup? How do you feel about it?
I mean, first of all, it's obviously like the best players we have by far, I think. I mean, that's like the most consistent guys, and I think every one of them deserves their spot. My personal favorite, I think, would be either Game King or Life Coach. I think those guys have the best odds of winning. And I think Freddy is pretty much like a wild card. I mean, he pretty much... I mean, I never really considered him to be like a favorite in the past, and still he pulled off these victories in these tournaments with playing like ridiculous decks and stuff like that. So yeah, Freddy's definitely up there as well, but these three are definitely like my favorites.
But if I could hook up in here, like in the first Gwent Challenger, we had like completely random people. No one knew anything about them. And like this Challenger is kind of familiar because those faces are seen a lot of play in other tournaments. They're kind of familiar now. You know how they play. You know a lot of them, a lot of them. Let's say Life Coach, when you watch Super JJ's stream, he's always talking about, he's playing 12 hours a day, and most of the time he's at Life Coach's house training together with him to get as much practice in as possible, so we can expect a lot from him, especially after he won the first one.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, a lot of people kind of forget about that, but it's kind of the same thing I was talking about before. Like, when you want to be like a competitive player, it takes a ton of your time, and if you really want to go the extra mile, you can't really stream it at the same time, really. That's what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, in terms of this lineup, it's a very powerhouse lineup. I think the main thing to keep in mind is that we are still so new into this whole esports scene that I feel like a lot of people, have their favorites. People like Life Coach, people like Game King, people like Freddy. Those are probably the top three, and people like Azikov as well. But keep in mind that, of course, everything's still so new, and there are going to be major upsets, right? Like, take, for example, the last Gwent Slam 3, where everybody voted basically who they thought was going to win, and pretty much everyone was wrong, right? Because I mean, of course, everyone's going to pick Game King and Freddy, or that's probably the worst. Of course, everybody's going to pick people that have won before, but there's only been like 1 or 2 tournaments before, so.
Right. I mean, it's obviously super hard to predict, and I think there will be upsets everywhere once again, for sure. Maybe not this time. One guy I'm curious about really is Azikov, because he had been in all these tournaments and he never performed like super well in them, which was fairly weird to me, because I definitely think he's like one of the best players. Like, maybe it's the transitioning from ladder to tournaments he didn't manage to.
To be fair, he participated in 2 tournaments, and in both of them he got 3 and 2, which is really, really close. Like, one misplay could have won him a game or the series overall. And maybe the first one, it was maybe stage fright. And I think we can, like, especially from him being always on top and having, let's say, Nilfgaard being ranked on Pro Ladder after 100 games and 1,480 points, something like that, you can expect a lot from a person like that. So I think we maybe get upset by him this time, not, let's say, Jorah or someone. Maybe Azikov goes the whole way, because he's playing a lot. If you follow him on Pro Ladder, like checking his stats daily, he grinds a lot.
Right.
I think one of the cool things that you have with this lineup is kind of the mashing together between these kind of unknown quantities that we maybe haven't seen for a while. Jorah, Life Coach, they haven't been making too much noise in the scene lately, and even Koloman, kind of came out of nowhere, won this huge challenger qualifier and stormed in. And then you got guys like, Game King, Azikov, Freddy, who have been at these tournaments time and time again. And, maybe it's even a little bit of a disadvantage, kind of knowing their play style, maybe knowing a little bit what to expect from them, in contrast kind of with their experience at these events and kind of, going through the motions already before. What do you guys think about that kind of dynamic going on?
Yeah, but here we have Coleman, who was in the first Grand Challenge as well. He participated and was top 16. He tried it over the American tree. He was not playing on the Euro one. He was in the American one. I think he lost against Vishra. I think in the top 8 match. But he was always. Yeah, he was always there. He was always there. He was always on top of the ladder, always trying to be top 100, 200, but he never got his chance. And maybe this is his once-in-a-lifetime chance to prove he's good. And maybe he can get something rolling like Freddy Babes, winning one qualifier, one tournament, and has the chance to participate in every further one by reaching the finals or something.
Yep.
Oh, did Colemon qualify through the qualifier, or was it crown points, by the way?
No, qualifier.
Yeah, he was
Qualifier.
that big 200-man challenger qualifier,
Ah, okay, so he won that. Okay.
which
fair
Adzikov
enough.
actually got through too. So we know Adzikov's got the skills to run through these things.
Oh,
It's just
absolutely.
Right.
it's just a matter of time. I mean, 8-man tournament. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
time before he gets one.
For sure, for sure.
So about this whole tournament meta, we have the new coin flip system going on with the alternating flips, and that really kind of heavily, I think we've seen, has an impact in these tournaments compared to like a ladder meta. What are you guys kind of expecting from this upcoming tournament in terms of like leader picks, faction picks, things that'll be performing well?
I think here it all comes down if the patch will hit, but I don't think it will hit before Challenger, so we might stick with the decks we saw at the latest Winston tournament, most of them, because they looked really, really well. Maybe someone will tune against some of this because Juha upset a lot of them with his Golden Weather and his additional weather in his 40-card foil test. Maybe we see some adjustments, but mainly I think the core is already settled. And the only thing I can see is maybe more ST, like more players trying to bring in movement with double code weather to punish people who are not running some weather clears and stuff. But overall, I think it's kind of settled already.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing might be the ban actually, because as Bactical was saying, it is kind of settled, right, in terms of like what we expect to be good. But I think people might actually go for a couple different bans. Some people might ban Nufgrid, some people might ban Northern Realms has been making a really big splash over the last like week and a half as well. So.
Yeah, those guys. I just checked the Gwent up, and those guys are super popular now. And the win rates are for like Hensel and full test especially super high. And,
Yeah.
Even like up high on the ladder, like 4.4K, like I've been seeing tons of Hensel.
And it's definitely not unreasonable to ban monsters either, just depending on what you want to go with.
Yep. Yeah, it depends on your own lineup a lot, I guess.
Do you think we'll see any specific targeting strategies or things that might be good? For example, we've seen a lot of people kind of bring these Unseen Elder decks as something that doesn't really mind going first necessarily because of its carryover. Do you think we'll see people maybe target that with like a reset heavy spell ST or some sort of banishing tech?
Could be, absolutely. I mean, typically, targeting in Conquest is always a bit of a risky business because when you want to target something, you want to target a weak or a vulnerable deck, but you also want to target something that you are sure the opponent is going to bring, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to target the weakest deck that you're sure they're going to bring, which, honestly, targeting Consume is not a bad bet, I think.
Yeah, and then your opponent is playing Eridan.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Consume had a really bad showing at the last event, Gwent Slam 3, right? So
Yeah.
maybe people won't bring it. It's definitely risky business targeting something lower down on the power level.
Yeah, I think the only faction where you see the faction and you know for sure, yeah, this is going to be deck, whatever, is Nilfgaard pretty much. Besides that, you don't really know. I mean, there's a couple of decks for both Skellige, for Anar, for monsters, and even entirely different archetypes that work entirely different and require a completely different tech.
Yeah.
Even when you think, okay, we know which Nilfgaard deck will be brought to the table, you saw what Juha did to Talbot in I think it was his consume against Nilfgaard. It was this was a slaughter. It was over after the first round. You knew it will be really brutal, but yeah, if people are bringing some kind of variations, maybe we see some mill again because this was completely cut out last tournament. Maybe people bought him here just because of that, and when people let it open, they knew. Let's say you can let Nilfgaard open against Adzikov because his 200 games or 150 games on Nilfgaard were always spiced because he's so confident playing that deck. If he's bringing him here, he's not bringing some mill shit. He's going to bring the real deal, which brought him up to the pro ladder. So that's the only reason why people maybe let Nilfgaard go through when they saw it from someone else or being 100% sure what list it's going to be.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. I mean, this is the third time they've done this new coin flip thing, so I think people have had time to think about it. strategies are getting developed, and I think it'll be seeing some really refined lists to kind of leverage this whole coin flip madness. Do we have any predictions for winning? I mean, like we said, Life Coach is kind of an unknown quantity, but he's always a powerhouse at these things. What do you think?
Honestly, I gotta say, if I had to take a pick, and I must reiterate, taking picks is always, it's anybody's game, right? But if I had to take a pick, my money would be on Life Coach. He has and that's kind of the obvious choice to some degree. But he has the most experience, and like you guys pointed out before, a lot of these players are playing very visibly. Everybody kind of knows to expect from everybody else, but Life Coach, since he hasn't been streaming, definitely has a bit of a leg up in that regard. And of course, he has the most experience, not just in playing games. That's not really what it's about, but in terms of being able to perform in front of when it's high stakes situations, right? Not cracking under pressure.
Yeah. So my guess as well would be on Life Coach. When I hear he's training like 10 or 12 hours a day, we haven't seen anything from him in the last weeks. We only heard about it, and we saw him winning the Challenger, because maybe the most people will say, okay, yeah, Life Coach won the last Challenger, he will win this one as well. But I think it's more about the strategic point. He knows what's on the line. He can win a lot. It's not that he would care about the money. It's about representation. And yeah, additionally to what Swim said, it's the stage. He knows everything about it. He's not cracking under all the pressure. And if you have someone like Coleman, who was never on a stage before, but he's a really good player, maybe that's the reason why Asikov is not performing that well, because maybe there's some kind of nerves or stage fright going on. But I think Life Coach has the perfect, he's like the perfect pick for if you have to choose a winner here.
Oh, hasn't Coleman been to the first Gwent Open at Gamescom?
No, I don't think so.
Why am I wrong?
Chora was playing in it.
Oh, Chora, Chora.
Yeah.
Oops. Yeah, sorry.
I think I've heard that Coleman has some experience in Hearthstone. I don't know if it's a tournament or just ladder grinding or something like that. But I think actually, if I had to pick, I think I'd go with him. I think when these guys kind of go through these qualifiers, they kind of get that experience already, and it seems to me like these guys kind of end up a little hungrier than maybe some of these people who have been here before. They really don't want to go all this way just to get bounced in the first round. So I think it's a little extra fire lit under them that we see some good play. Did you make a prediction, Randy?
I would probably go for Life Coach as well. I mean, it seems to be the most reasonable pick to go for. Like either Life Coach or Game King, but probably a bit more Life Coach. A bit more.
Yeah. Although, of course, all the people watching this, keep in mind, that's if you have to choose. In reality, this really could be anybody's game, even though two of us did just guess Life Coach. I mean, this is the opportunity for the new up-and-coming players to really prove themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this lineup is incredibly stacked. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, we have still to think that it's a card game. We saw in the last Gwent Slam that your hand can completely break. If you have a bad hand, then the game is lost. Like Game King didn't draw a single neck, I think, against Yuha in 2 turns with Giant Toad as well. If you don't get one of the conditions, then you might lose because there's still some RNG involved.
Yeah, really anything can happen type of game. But anyway, moving on to the next topic, we are going over some of the new cards revealed in the last 2 weeks.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I've went ahead and picked out some interesting ones. So let's take a start with the first one. We've got Stregobor. I think I said that right. 7-point silver neutral. Truce, which is, I think, if both players haven't passed. Each player draws a unit and then sets its power to 1. So
do we know this is gonna be a 7? Because they've shown it as both a 7 and a 10, I believe.
Yeah, on the reveal page it's a 10, I think. And in the stream it was a 7?
That's correct.
Okay. The image I have is 7, but with all these cards, things are subject to change, so take these values with a grain of salt, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it really depends though. If the card is playable if it's a 10 or if it's only a 7, because this card is not bad at all, right? If you build your deck around it a little bit, and you know you have a lot of low power cards, low strength cards that have powerful effects in your deck, like this could actually work. And also it's obviously a potential milling tool. Yeah, I don't know, but it really depends. Like as a 7, I would probably not think it would see much play.
Yeah.
But as a 10, why not? I mean, an arm might be able to abuse this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious what decks you guys see this being played in, because for me, my top 2 picks would probably be Spell-a-Tell and maybe Mill, although as far as we know, Mill might be... They were hinting Mill would be dealt with in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait,
that's
what's the interaction of this card with Quenzyme? Like, if you draw a unit as Quenzyme.
The Quen will block the damage from Stregobor, unless they change it.
And does it
basically-
reset base power, or if you've got like a buffed up protector, will it set that to 1? I'm assuming it sets it to 1 no matter what.
It sets it to 1, but since you'll pretty much always be playing this in round 1, especially with ADC, it means that you oftentimes, I mean, if you're running a Farseerless deck, there's nothing bad to draw if you get it in round 1, since your protector will just go from 2 to 1.
Yeah, I could even see this being good in something like a Consume deck, where you need to get your Brand Warrior or like Necker Warrior, and the points of those don't really matter because it's kind of fuel for your engine. Something like that could be pretty good. But
Yeah.
like you guys said, they have been alluding to maybe Mill getting axed or something like that, and yet they're printing cards like this. So it's kind of strange. What do you guys think about that? The whole Mill interaction.
If they, like they said already, they want to get rid of it, not making it a threat at all, even when they're adding a neutral card and later on a Nilfgaard card as well, which is able to draw cards. That's maybe scary in the first sight, but I think here we have to trust CPL like we always did. When they announce something, they're always listening to the community, and we are probably raging about getting milled for past half a year now.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think they will find a way.
Here's the thing about Mill. I think Mill in general is a healthy thing to have. Like, if you happen to meet Mill in like 1 out of 20 games, I think that's, or 1 out of 30 maybe, like that's perfectly fine, right? It forces you to play your deck in a completely different way. And even though these games take like forever, I think if it doesn't happen like all the time, it's perfectly fine. Like,
I think Mill is kind of sort of like Golden Weathers at a certain point, where it doesn't necessarily feel too bad. I remember when the Golden Weathers came out and they were at 3 damage each, a lot of very good players were saying it's not really so big of a deal. And of course, to them it's not, but at the same time, with Mill you have to play in a very different way, and it can be an extremely frustrating player experience for not just your new players, but even like the kind of middle of the road players that don't really know exactly how they should be playing against it. It feels like there's no way you can win.
Yeah, that's a really good point. But it's cool to see cards like this in the game. I love the whole design of having this symmetric ability. Where basically, you have a card that's doing the exact same thing for both players. But if you're building your deck or your strategy, it kind of get a lot of mileage out of that. Go ahead, Swim. Sorry.
Oh no. I was only worried you might switch to the next card. I wanted to point out with Stregobor, there's one more thing about it, which is if you look at its wording, it says you draw a unit from your deck. It's not necessarily the top unit in your deck. I think it probably is. And if it is, that means you can do some tricky stuff, because if you can ever engineer a situation where your spy is the top unit of your deck, then this card is a powerhouse, right? So imagine this, right? You play Stefan Skellen for Cantarella, and then you play Stregobor. Let's say Stregobor gets released as a 10, which I think is the most likely scenario. So you're playing Stefan. Of course, you're losing a lot of points by playing Stefan because his effect costs you points. You play Stefan, then you play Stregobor. You've played 20 points in a gold and a silver, which is bad, but you gain 10 of that back already because your Cantarella is worth 10 more points. So you're kind of already at 30 with a gold and a silver, and then your opponent's draw is, of course, weakened as well.
oh, that's a really good point, actually. Like, that's another great usage of that card.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, for example, if you're gonna be running Spellitel with Stregobor, you will probably put Yavin in there just for that random hit. If you hit Yavin, you're just good.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about these symmetric cards is it really rewards this kind of clever way of deck building or thinking about it. Really like this one. Hope to see more in the future. But moving on here, we've got another bomb of a card reveal. It is Siri Nova, 1 point,
Yeah.
neutral gold. If you have exactly 2 copies of each bronze in your starting deck, set power to 25. Randy, I know we were talking a little bit before, you had some thoughts about this card as a finisher. Why don't you go ahead
Yeah.
and run us down on that?
Okay, yeah, I saw Swim experimenting with that card pretty much without it being in the game even on the stream yesterday. Like he already tried to make a reasonable deck with only 2 copies of each card. Yeah, here's the thing I'm a little bit worried about. Like in the last patches, CDPR seemed like they wanted to get rid of all these 1-card finishers pretty much. Like
Yeah.
we had this meta before with Yalma and all these super strong golds, and CDPR pretty much got rid of all of them. And here's the issue I have with Serenova. I mean, if you construct your deck all around this card, you can you can play Royal Decree. You draw a 25 strength gold out of your deck, and then especially if you want to flip, have fun dealing with that tempo. And then you can even reuse it as a finisher with Renew into Serenova. So that's a little bit of a worrying trend to me. And also that there's a lot of new finishers in the game, pretty much. Like Trial of the Classes could be used as a finisher. If you Gwent sign something and then use Trial of the Classes on that card. And I think there's a couple more in the factions, actually. Like Skellige got the... What's his name? The bear? Olaf.
Oh,
Siri Nova is doomed, so you're not going to be able to use Renew on it.
Oh, she's
Well, I
doomed?
wanted it, yeah.
Oh, I missed that.
You have to probably, if she's not stubborn, then
Okay.
maybe play Milva with her.
Okay,
sorry.
it's perfectly reasonable. She's doomed for sure.
I mean, even without that, it's a huge bomb to drop, at the end of round
Right.
3, just
Yeah, for
25 points, 1 card. But
Yeah, maybe if you could play it in Nifgard deck with some spoilers, might be good.
No, it's a deployability.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure we know that.
it doesn't say deploy on the card art that I'm looking at right now.
I think they're like kind of reformatting the card text, and just like how they phrase it is all kind of up in there. I guarantee you guys it's a deploy.
Subject to
Okay.
change, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
That being said, given that it's a deployability, there's one pretty subtle interaction that I'm actually not sure of, and that's if Royal Decree sets it to 25 or 27. Because, of course, whichever one activates first, if Royal Decree buffs it to 3 and then Siri Nova buffs it to 25, obviously it'll only make a difference in fringe cases, but that still does affect the power level of the card, since you will always run it with Royal Decree.
I guess the big question about this card is, how big of a deck building cost is it putting exactly 2 of each bronze? Because the interesting thing is the minimum bronze is 15, so already you're kind of hurting your deck consistency by running 16 bronzes to get exactly 2.
Exactly.
And then you're watering down your consistency even more because, all these great cards that you want to have, like your Impair Brigades, Impair Enforcers, all of a sudden there's one less that you have access to. What do you think, Swim? I mean, you've been messing around, like, theory crafting.
So I would say there's definitely only a handful of factions you can run this in. Like I kind of messed around with it in factions. I looked at the monsters faction, for example. I don't see there's any way you can fit this into monsters, unless of course there's some way to do it with the new with the new like kind of moonlight bronzes, whatever those do. But just like looking at the current monsters pool, that's not an option. Squirtle and Skellige are probably the best bets. I think Northern Realms is probably off as well, although. Maybe, who knows? I mean, Northern Realms is getting a lot of new bronzes. I would say Squirtle and Skellige are going to be your best bets, and I think Siri Nova will definitely see some experimentation there.
Yeah, Skellige is not bad because even if you're running 2 bronzes, you can revive them to reuse the bronzes. So it's kind of like you have access to like maybe 3 or 4 in that way. What do you think, Back to Kill? How about this card? Are you liking it? Do you think it'll see competitive play?
It might. The thing here is you have to sacrifice deck building for it. If you like Swimmer said, Northern Realms, you want your triple Blue Stripe Scout. You have some cards where you always want to have the 3, the special number, because you're always looking at bronze cards in a pack of 3. Imperial Brigade, Enforcer, like you already said. There might only be not a handful, but 1 or 2 decks which this card would be playable in. Maybe some new cards we haven't seen yet, maybe some neutrals, maybe some Moonlight cards that we can still fit it into monsters. But right now, I can only really see it in Squatter because there are a lot of bronze cards where you can easily cut them.
Yeah. So I'm quite curious. So with Siri Nova, wait, I forgot where I was going with this.
The answer is yes.
Yes, it's.
So okay. The question you have to ask yourself is with Siri Nova is, at what point would a gold vanilla Geralt see strength if you tweaked his numbers up? Like I'm actually I'd love to hear what you guys think. Is it 16, 17, 18, 19? Is there what number do you think Geralt becomes playable? Because once you answer that, then the question is it worth sacrificing your deck building for plus whatever that is to get Siri Nova?
Right now, I think
That's
he's
a good
at
question.
13. And
Yeah, he's a
I would increase the number by 2. Let's say 15.
So you think Geralt's playable at 15?
I think he should be at 15. But if he's playable at 15, since you look at
competitive decks.
Competitive decks?
Yeah.
I think you'd have to be like a 20 or something.
No, 18. 18 at least.
18? Randy?
Yeah, something around that, like 17, 18. Like 20 would already be like crazy good, I think.
Yeah. Okay, I'm thinking like 18, 19, but so it seems like let's say 18 is the answer. That means you're kind of hurting your deck to get 7 extra points out of Siri Nova, which is not necessarily great, and it might even be less than 7 on average if Royal Decree buffs first, right? So let's say generously 7 extra points out of Siri Nova. That means that 7 points is a lot, especially as a finisher, for sure. The difference of something like Dumb Ben or Light Cavalry, which of course changes the entire course of the game when it comes out, is less than double that, right? And it's not necessarily attached to a finisher either. I would say it will only maybe see play in 1 or 2 decks. I really love the idea of the card, though. This is definitely
me
card
too.
in the set.
Same. Like,
yeah, and
so
this
far.
is
this is super interesting and great from a card design perspective, I think. Like, I really like Reno Jackson and Hearthstone, and I think this kind of goes into the same way.
Yeah, I think with Nova and later on cards like Vanderbrief, we have probably one of the best new cards added to the game, design-wise and effect-wise, because it's some kind of new stuff. It's not buff a card to 5 points, buff this unit to 1 or 2 points more. It's completely new, and it's really impressive what they bring up to the table here.
Yeah, it's also important, I think, because you can only make so many units that damage something by X or buff something by whatever. Like, this gets boring at some point, so yeah.
Yeah, and the best thing about it is she'll just get better the more they release cards. You have a wider selection of bronzes, and you're not really sacrificing as much power to get her effect off. That'd be interesting to see. I love the card too. Definitely great. We'll have to see what happens.
I kind of wish she was a little bit better. But that being said, as the game gets more and more cards, she might have more flexibility. Like right now, we're saying we can only see her fitting into Squirtle, but we haven't even seen all the new bronzes yet, so we'll just have to see.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, if someone can make her work, it would be you, Swim. That's for sure.
I'm gonna be trying.
Just bang your head against the wall until something happens.
With the other finisher goals, I think she can probably compete with like Yalma, Tibor, and stuff like that. I mean, she's probably up there, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, she's like Tibor, but you don't give them a card. That's pretty huge. Tibor is like playable.
Yeah. What if you play with Fringilla?
Yeah, sure. Player with Fringilla, why not? And then suddenly when you look at it that way, when you're restricting your deck to make them not draw a card, that sounds a lot better.
Right.
Anyway, moving on. Next, we have maybe a bit of a controversial card here. It is the Shillard 9-point gold Nilfgaardian Truce. Draw a card from both decks, keep one, and give the other to your opponent. Now, I say controversial as a lot of people have been, I guess, discussing whether this is, you know, unfun or unhealthy. We've seen already some complaints about muzzle. Anytime it seems that a card is stealing something away from you, people don't tend to like that. How do you guys feel about Shillard? Do you think it's unfun, unhealthy?
I mean, part of Nilfgaard's theme is literally unfun, though. And that,
Right.
I'm not even joking. Like
Yeah.
seriously, because they have cards like Treason, they have cards like Vico Medic. They
Swears even.
they deny your stuff and they use your stuff against you. It's
Yeah,
all
that's
built into that.
pretty much an archetype Nilfgaard has.
Exactly.
That's not playable yet. Like the entire thing about manipulating your opponent's deck, manipulating your opponent's hand, his graveyard, like everything he has.
Exactly.
It's not here yet, but I think what's the best thing Shillard can do? He can draw you a gold from your opponent's deck and give your opponent like bronze he cannot make any use of, right? Like that's the best thing he can do.
Yep.
So the question is, can you make him do that reliably?
So what I see with this card is really interesting. What I see is almost the start of a new archetype in Nilfgaard. Probably not enough tools yet, but if you run Stregobor and if you run Shillard, then you're stacking incentives to see what the top card of your deck is. So, for example, let's say you run Calvite, right, and Kahir, right? You get some information over the top of your deck, and then with Shillard and Stregobor, you're able to use those at the right times to draw a card that's good for you to reduce with Stregobor or good for you to screw your opponent with Shillard. Now, I don't think these tools will be enough for that, but if they eventually release a bronze or something, you could be looking at a kind of a new package or playstyle there.
Yeah.
But we have some kind of cards that work like that. Like the Alba Armored Cavalry, which looks at the top 3 decks. People use this card to make to try to get Gaunter being a viable card, like spotting those cards and playing Gaunter. And yeah, I guessed it right because I know what's on top of your deck, which unit. Because it's not shuffling, that's the most important part. Maybe you can combine it with 1 or 2 of the new cards to make it a viable deck. But overall, I think this card it looks really, really good. Like building a complete deck around it doesn't seem to be necessary if you combine it with, let's say, Stefan, to just put trash on top of your deck, a card you don't really need in exchange for something good or some kind of decent card. If your opponent's card is, let's say, Roach, and you say, okay, I don't need that, you can have it, then you just pick your card and give the Roach to your opponent. But overall, I think with 9 points of strength and the ability to maybe completely ruin your opponent's deck plan or crafting plan, this might be good, especially with the Mulligan feature still in the game. Something your opponent wants next round, and you can just steal it away.
Oh, is the
Well,
Mulligan
but
feature-
the mulligan feature will give you like harpies and commandos, though, right? That's not what you want either.
Then you wait until you thin.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the thing with this is I think even, you know, synergies aside with, say, like, Alba Armored Cavalry or, like, Sarthisius, I don't think it's that hard to get, like, good value out of this card in general. I mean, like, worst case scenario, you're just drawing a card that's fine, but even, like, drawing your opponent something like a Blue Stripe Scout where it's something they want to pull from their deck, even just putting that into their hand and, like, you getting a normal bronze, like, that's a lot of value right there. And then take it aside from the fact that, you know, maybe you steal one of their just super value silvers and you just give them, you know, some sort of card that doesn't synergize with their deck, like a bronze or something. So, I mean,
Well,
even,
let me actually ask you this: what's the worst card you can give them?
from your deck, like worst for you.
Yeah, I mean the question is basically if there's a terrible, almost unusable card, like a literally 0 or 1 point card you can give them from your deck that it itself isn't a 1-point card if you had played it, something that kind of only works for you, then of course this card can really go off, right? But I mean, is there anything like that in the game yet?
I mean, you could just give them like a Impair Enforcer and then muzzle it back, you know, once they play it. But in Nilfgaard, I don't know, maybe like a Vikavaro Novice.
Vikavaro Novice would be the worst thing.
That's what I would think.
Yeah, something like that. Right.
So the question you have to ask yourself then, so you run a Vikavaro Novice deck, right? And you're banking on the opponent not having any alchemy cards in their deck, which might not necessarily happen because there's a lot of alchemy cards now. But you run Vikavaro Novice, which might be a good card already. I mean, Alchemy Nilfgaard is kind of showing itself to be a thing, right? Then you're running Shylard. So let's say you slap Shylard into Alchemy Nilfgaard. There's a decent chance you draw a Vikavaro Novice, and whenever you do, it means you're effectively playing a 7 plus the opponent's play, right? Because Shylard is 9 minus the 2 from Novice, so it's a 7 plus whatever the value of the card you get from them. Which means if you get something like 10 or higher, including like denial potential, you're looking at a great value already.
Yeah, that's kind of good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely like strictly better than Outbreak, for example. But Outbreak is still better. But yeah.
Outbreak is just
So I kind of like Shylard in Alchemy Nilfgaard maybe.
Yeah, why not? Could work.
Yeah, and of course, because Vikavaro Novice isn't dead to you, you still have the choice, right? If you see like a Roach on top of their deck, then you just take the Novice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess the question is, you know, how often are you getting into this situation? I think it's pretty likely, definitely. Just a normal, decent result. But this one's definitely fun too. A lot of weird combos you can pull off with it to really annoy your opponent. But anyway, what do you guys think? Like, is it unhealthy being able to steal something from your opponent's deck? Do you think that's something that they should maybe not try and design so much into the game?
It's dangerous. So there's a certain feeling you get when your card or strategy is being denied, right? And it's something you build into games with psychology, right? Like, for example, they're never gonna have a card that like, or maybe I shouldn't say never, but they really don't want to have a common occurrence, which is a Nilfgaard player or someone else like stealing a card from their hand, right? Like hand denial feels the worst because it's something you have the most access to. The early builds of Treason back in the day, I'm talking about old Treason. So you guys remember old Treason, which takes a card from the bottom of your deck?
Right.
So you guys know I've provided the devs with feedback for a while. That was actually my idea. They had it where the Treason was at the top, taking the top card, and I was saying if it takes the bottom card, then it feels less bad for the opponent because they don't feel like they got denied something they were about to have, right? So if Shylard did something similar, then it would feel a lot less bad. Because what it comes down to, Shu, is it's all about psychology, right?
Then it would also be better with Xartesius, which puts a card of your choice at the bottom of the deck. So your opponent thinks, okay,
that's a dangerous thing.
I won't draw this card, and if you combine those two goals, you have 19 strength in total. I think Xartesius is a 10 right now. Plus a card of choice you get, like an additional gold. You always play 5 gold cards. If your opponent is not drawing 4 at the beginning of the game, but you get a card of choice, it seems really, really good.
Yeah. It's basically similar to like what Johnny does, but you only get good gold. You only get good golds.
But you deny it. Johnny is just
exactly, and you deny it. Yeah.
So, Shu, to answer your question, I don't think it's too bad. Although I do think it might be maybe in some way tweakable to make it less bad. Yeah. In terms of like how it feels.
Yeah, you have to be careful with those things because completely denying opponent's strategies is something, especially new players don't like at all. Because they want to play powerful cards that do good things every game. And they don't want the game plan denied.
Those are good points, and the thing I like about this too, in contrast to something like Muzzle, is it's not so backbreaking in a mirror. You can, if you're playing Spies and you're up against Spies, you draw like Infiltrator and Imperial Brigade. It's kind of a wash, your opponent getting that. So it's a bit less volatile in that kind of matchup, which I like.
It's kind of like Xartesius, where you're not really denying your opponent's tool, you're just denying something they might have had next turn, or next round, I guess.
Right. All right, so moving on from one controversial topic to another, I'm sure you guys can guess who it is. We've got Ada for Northern Realms here, and the Whispering Hillock. We'll just go ahead and do these both at once since they're similar. Both 6-point gold leaders. Ada for Northern Realms and Hillock for monsters. Ada spawn a bronze or silver cursed unit, and Hillock spawn an organic card. So again, this is the new spawn keyword being brought up, where it's kind of like a discovery type mechanic. You get 3 cards from these card pools in the entire game with these tags, and you choose one to play. Now this is kind of the big topic of discussion, is this whole RNG introduction in the new set, or rather I guess more RNG than before with this new spawn mechanic. So let's just open the floor. I mean, what do you guys think? Swim, I think your thoughts are well documented on RNG.
Are they? I don't think they are at all. Wait, Shu, what do you think my thoughts on RNG are?
Well, you did the video, man, defending it a little bit. Not saying defending in a bad way, but you put it out that it's possibly something good for the game, and you gave reasons
word there that's important.
Why it's not so bad.
I'm not saying like every leader should have a discover mechanic attached to it. And
No.
I feel like a lot of people kind of ended up thinking that's what I was saying for some reason.
Yeah, your words tend to get twisted quite a lot.
What do I think about these? Honestly, I think that I'm not sure how I feel about the new spawn mechanic. It's a little weird. It pulls from very big card pools, and of course, the fact that you have to play the card immediately when you do choose it limits your option. And the fact that not only does it spawn from large pools, but those pools are also artificially enlarged compared to Hearthstone's discover mechanic, specifically because it can pull between faction lines, which I'm not sure how I feel about. That seems a little iffy, potentially. I'm honestly not sure. I would really have to see this new spawn mechanic in the game to really give my input on it. But at the very least, I will say that I don't disagree with the community, which is that they don't like it on leaders, and I agree with that. I'm not necessarily sure it needs to be on leaders.
Like when I watched the video about RNG, I was like, yeah, pretty good points. Like here's the thing: if you play Gwent, all the games in certain matchups feel a little bit same all the time.
Yes.
Like you do your setup and you do your game plan every time. At some point you pass, and the conditions when you pass are pretty much the same all the time. So I think some RNG elements might help making that a little bit more diverse and make games feel a little more unique. So that's a good thing, yeah. But like leaders, in my opinion, should be something that's pretty consistent. Like that's at least what I would expect from a leader. And maybe it's fine to have leaders that are not consistent all the time, but it feels a bit weird to me.
My points, let's say, for Hillock especially, is that if you see leaders, you don't see which cards are included in your opponent's deck, if there are some spawn cards or whatever, but leaders like Hillock can be really dangerous, because you have to play around stuff which your opponent usually doesn't have in his basic list or starting deck. So he might just pull a mutagen out of nowhere and you're like, oh goddamn. Or you have to keep your locking cards, because there might be an adrenaline rush at the end of the round which he could pull out of nowhere. And having that on a leader is quite dangerous, yeah.
I mean, at least with the leader, it's staring you right in the face that, anything can happen. You see Ada and you say, okay, maybe a Morkvark's coming out. Where I tend to not like these spawn cards is when, the range of options that you can get is so wide in terms of power level, and also there's so many options. Something like the Winch is I think good RNG for the game, despite the fact that that card may be a little overtuned, but that's another discussion. But
yeah, no, I think that's right. That's a perfect example of good RNG.
Yeah, with the Winch, I mean, you're getting a random machine, but all the machines are pretty similar on power level. They all do kind of similar things. And again, there's not that many machines in the game. You're pulling from like 1 of 10, 1 of 12, something like that.
And it also spawns a Northern Realms machine specifically, right? And that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And machines, not only are you getting an even power level, but they're pretty much all relatively proactive, all things considered. Like sometimes you want the opponent to have like 1 unit so you can battering ram it, but they're surprisingly proactive.
And they do very similar things, which is good.
Exactly.
Even something like the Skellige sword unit that spawns a soldier, even that I'm not big on because there are a lot of soldiers out there that are very specific. You get a raider, you get a queen's guard. Those aren't something that are good in
Fourth Queen's Guard?
all situations or something like that. But that's where I really take offense to this kind of spawn mechanic, is where it's something where you're just throwing it out there and you get something crazy that you really shouldn't have in your deck, because it becomes a situation like Bactical said where you can't play around this. I mean, you're up against maybe Sky Tall, you see the Scorch, and you're saying, okay, I don't have to play around this anymore. Then they slap down Isengrim, get the Scorch out of nowhere, and it's like, it just feels bad, at least in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, also randomly getting access to like a Morkwa can definitely make the game super weird if you don't have an answer to that. Yeah. I mean, the new leaders are definitely dangerous. I would have to see them in play to really evaluate their power level, but yeah.
The thing is, it always will come back to consistency, because those decks will be mostly seen at lower ladder if they are not consistent enough. But if you have a leader like Edda, which can be a point value of at least 14, 15 points each game, because she brings another body. Cursed units are quite strong. You have, let's say, Raging Berserker, you tick it once, it's a 12 strength or 11 strength bear. The consistency of that card is pretty good, because the usual value is 15 points, and then it might be dangerous because it can at least be the same value as some other leaders. But if it could be a complete gamble and it's not too strong, then I would be completely fine with it. But in another contraction, they promise us new leaders, and then they bring leaders which you can't use. It's like meh as well.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel they should go about balancing these kind of spawning cards? Do you think it's only a strength thing, or should they look at the card pool that they're pulling from and limit that? Or do you think maybe they'll start introducing maybe quote-unquote bad cards to the game to kind of dilute these pools of the strength? I mean, what sort of approach do you guys think they might take?
The problem with the pool isn't the strength of the pool. Like, introducing bad cards to the pool does decrease the overall strength of it, but more than that, it might increase the variance between the higher cards and the lower cards of the pool, which makes it, if anything, even harder to balance. I would say the problem stems from that specific variance, and that's why Hearthstone's Discover has a smaller pool and thus less variance, because of course it can only pull from faction cards. There's a chance Gwent might be kind of wanting to go down that road with kind of like a faction limitation or something kind of like that. I'm not sure. But the size of the pool is definitely the issue.
Yeah, especially when we see similar cards already in the game, which works perfectly, or which are working perfectly. Let's say Eridan, you have a pool of all your white card units, and that's pretty good. It's viable, you can choose which one you need right now, but it's nothing to completely unexpected for you and your opponent. If he sees the Eridan, he knows, okay, I have to maybe play around Navigator, or he's just playing a weather effect or a hazard effect on me, because you know what's going to come.
Yeah, these will definitely be interesting. I mean, they've said, again, that these are meant for the new game mode. It's kind of hard for us because we haven't seen the new game mode just yet. But I think one thing that we should all remember is that CDPR are definitely very responsive to feedback in their game.
Exactly.
They've shown time and time again that if something isn't working out quite right, if something is not too good, they will go ahead and change it. So that at least gives me confidence to not, hold their feet to the fire too close, despite any worries we have. But anyway, moving on there. So those are the new leaders. Next up, we've got Pavko Gale. So a friendly face that you guys might recognize. 5-point Sky Tall silver. Play a random bronze or silver item from your deck. Now, this is the RNG that I don't mind, because it's something that you can build around. You have to put the cards in their deck. There's only so many items. So this is good. Also, items are kind of a new thing that they're introducing, kind of a tag for words. What's everybody's thoughts on the new items and this card also?
Well, it's basically like Skjall, except with one word removed, right? Or one word swapped. It's just going to depend on the silver item tools you have to pull from. I mean, the new Mahakam Horn is definitely a good grab, as is the old Commander's Horn as well. since people are saying that it will probably get the item tag. Some cards might retroactively get it. I mean, if you can pull Commander Sword and Mahakamhorn with this, then it might be pretty playable. But honestly, I don't have amazing apps.
That'd be crazy, man. Silver Natalis, basically.
To be perfectly honest with you guys,
Yeah.
this card's best chance at being playable is the fact that Squirtel's silvers suck.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but Bursa into Horn into the Mahakam Horn is for how many points is that playing? Like that's quite a bit, right?
You deny 2 silver slots.
Yeah, you lose 2 silver slots, sure, and you also need to put like an additional item to increase the odds of not blanking, right?
Yeah, but consistency
don't
is always
think-
worth a lot, too.
Yeah, I don't think it will be bad. Like I think the card will be playable, right?
think this
if
card
it
will be
doesn't
really
see
good,
too much
actually.
play, they will tweak the numbers, increase
Right,
it, so it's
right.
even better. Maybe easier targetable with cards like ADC if it has a higher base strength number. But overall, I think they announced there will be more neutral items or more items overall. Maybe there's something you can build a deck around it with triple bronze items and stuff. In Squirtle, maybe this will see play then.
Yeah, I mean we will see a lot of tutors for the items and a lot of stuff. It's basically the same as what's its name, as alchemy. Like first of all there were only the alchemy cards, and then we got like all these tutors that really made the cards really good. And I think it will be the same for items basically.
This card could be interesting in like a spell ST deck. I mean, most of the items are spells, or am I wrong about that?
Yeah, they are. Like Markham Horn is a spell. Wait.
Yep.
Yeah,
Every
this
item has a spell.
this could
Yeah,
be
right.
great just as another access tool for that, and fits right into their strategy perfectly.
Yeah, that's a good point as well.
Sure.
What do you guys think the likelihood of getting a leak item in the game?
Honestly, man, at this rate, pretty high.
If people like Moonlight from CDPR introduced in a card, don't know his name, the developer who was on the last stream as well, who is the
Austria.
face of German.
Yeah, Austria on Germain, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe they will introduce it. Everyone from CDPR will be in the game. Maybe Rethis is in the game since the beginning and we don't know it yet.
I'll tell you guys when Rethaz is in the game.
Okay.
I can't wait for that day. That's gonna be great. But Popco Gale, all right, everyone seems pretty good on it. So moving on, we've got Olaf, 20-point Skellige Gold, Beast Cursed, deal 10 damage to self, reduce the damage inflicted by 2 for each beast you played this match. Another one of these finisher type cards.
Yeah.
How do you
I
feel
think
about that,
we
Randy?
finally have our bear deck coming, which everyone at the beginning was memeing about by randomly playing Remis multiple times and Blood Calling Raw. And yeah, we're getting a lot of beastie units now, and with him having only the condition to play five of them, it seems like a really good card, especially as a finisher. Maybe even playing twice with the likes of Renew.
Here's the thing: you don't really need to play Beast at all, right, to make him work. I mean, you could
Yep.
play Olaf, and then you could play like either Armorsmith or Herbalist into like
Mudrome.
Mudrome or only Mudrome. Yeah, like there's a couple of ways, right?
You could even
Obviously,
throw.
you can do the obvious path, just slam it into a deck that has a lot of beasts, and try to get the 20 points right off. But you don't necessarily have to, I think.
There's one more thing you can do on top of all that as well, which is
The War Crier, right?
you can play four
Oh.
you can play 4 beasts so that it's 18 damaged, and you can work
Whoa.
it.
Crazy.
It's interesting at the very least.
I mean, we look at Siri Nova, 25 points with such a high condition. This is 20, and I mean the condition doesn't seem that hard with some of the new cards we've seen introduced. The bear spawning unit, and that's a good res target for Freya, or at least a decent one. So I think pumping 5 bears out, or beasts rather, wouldn't be too hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it comes down to the question we asked before, which is, at what point would a vanilla unit need to be played as a gold slot to be competitive? We agreed on 18, let's say, which, if anything, might be a little generous, but 18, which means that you're basically getting 2 points for the possibility that it might not necessarily be higher than that, and the fact that you might need to run it with an armor smith or beast to be viable, which is just about right.
Yeah, like this card could be perfectly playable, I think. Like it might be strictly better than Serenova.
Oh,
Yeah,
I think this is great.
Yeah, especially when you see new cards like the Bone Talisman or the Clam Protector, which would fit into the deck if Swim just introduced without having bears or just playing like 2, 3, 4 of them into Warcryer. You can just smash it on the board, drop the other card, thin your deck, and get the Talisman and heal it up and strengthen it by 3 points. Maybe you see some other cards which could benefit Olaf more.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of gold cards out there that don't even hit 20 points of value that see play. So just a pretty easy condition to meet, 20 points. I mean, I think that's really good, especially in Skellige where the golds are pretty, poo-poo in general.
You can also renew him, by the way, I think.
Yep.
Like, that's not...
You can play him and then heal him with like Mandrake, and then you can renew him later.
Yeah.
Or even if you just play him at like 16, 18, play a few more bears and then renew, then he'd still be fine. Yeah, this card's good, guys.
So, as a tangent from Olaf, Shu, would you mind terribly if I added one card to the discussion here?
Sure thing, yeah.
So, I want to talk about the Skellige Bear Spawn card, which is very related to Olaf. The bronze 1 strength Beastmaster, yeah.
New restore target, I guess.
Yeah. So the Beastmaster is nuts, guys. This card is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else feel the same?
Yeah.
It's really, really, really good, especially you bring 2 units to a board. Like a card which can bring another one to the board is always really good, especially with buffs and horn and everything. But yeah, this card bringing a bear to the board out of nowhere is really, really good.
So, real quick, just for the audio listeners, this is Beastmaster, 1 point Skellige card. Spawn a bear. The bears are 11 points, yeah?
Yes.
Interesting to note, too, is this thing has the soldier tag, so it can be pulled by the new silver sword card, and also the Tersiak tag, so it is getting boosted by veterans, is that right?
No, because it doesn't have the veteran tag.
Veteran.
Oh, okay, right.
That would be hilarious, though. So the thing about Beastmaster, there's a couple things. Everyone's saying this card is insane, or at least some people are, but there's a couple things that people don't really talk about. The most insane. So this card is single-handedly the best restore target that this game has ever seen, right? And a lot of people aren't aware of that. So you used to restore on Duregare, which was cute because you can Ekimara it to kill it in 1 round, right? That doesn't really matter, right? The best restore target is always going to be a bronze, right? Because it means you can fray it to get the value back, right? The reason why Shield or Battle Maiden wasn't as good of a restore target was because you can't really play like 5 Battle Maidens, because when you're restoring it, you're only gaining value if you res it again afterwards, and then you run out of Battle Maiden targets, and you're already looking at only gaining 7 strength instead of, or you're only getting 6 instead of 7. But the best thing about Beastmaster is that when you use Battle Maiden to pull out another one, it kills the first one. And you can restore it right then and there in round 1. This card is absolutely insane.
Yes. And every time it plays to the board, it brings a bear with it.
Yeah, actually, I didn't realize that. That's actually crazy.
So you can restore it round 1 and then Freya it in round 2 and round 3 without even using Sigdrifa.
See, I was thinking maybe some sort of cute Stammelford's Tremor kind of wounds Warcryer deck, where you play these guys out. It spawns a 1 and 11. You play your Tremors, you get a free Elemental, and then you can Warcryer the 10-point bear for pretty solid points. And then play your the cursed guys that get buffed by cursed and damage.
The bears are cursed as well.
Yeah. But that's even good too, just restoring these guys with Battle Maiden synergy. I mean, that could be the deck right there. Battle Maidens, Bears, Curse Guys,
If that doesn't change, I guarantee you it will be the deck.
And
Oh,
when
I
they-
will play this day one, I think. I like Skellige.
Oh yeah, you're a big Skellige fan.
Let's go 20 and 0.
Yeah, the biggest part here is that you don't have to consume it. Usually you play Grandmaster, you consume a Freya, you get rid of a point, the bear plays for 10, Grandmaster total plays for 13 points. But here you can leave the point strength unit on the board and just focus it with another maiden. This is
Exactly.
crazy.
Like the reason Restore was so good on Doregory is because Doregory can eat himself to enable Restore early, right? This is exactly that. The fact that they die to Battle Maidens is insane. You guys thought Restore was good before this card.
And it's proactive too. That's the best part too.
Yeah,
Condition.
absolutely. I didn't even mention that. That's exactly right.
How
Alright.
do you nerf this card, by the way?
That's a
Like,
tricky
that's-
one. It's difficult
Yeah.
to nerf.
Like, you could make it doomed, I guess.
Not spawn, maybe summon a bear and still go for the bear deployment ability to consume a unit. Maybe
Right.
this could have it, like, because right now we only know the bear as a card. You have to consume something and then you get a bear on the board.
I mean,
But right now
removing the soldier tag would be big, but I mean, there's a limit to like how they can even tag things without it being like against flavor code.
Yeah.
Flavor's overrated anyway, right? Yeah, these Olaf and the Beastmaster is something to look out for. Anyway, last one we'll do real quick. We have Vandergrift. This is a 6-point Northern Realms card. Cursed Kedweni officer. Damage all non-cursed units by 1. If a unit is destroyed, apply Ragnaru to its row. So at first sight, you see Ragnarok on the text, you're like, oh my god, this card's insane. But it's pretty much just spawning a fog on the opposite row.
Yeah.
When you think of it like that, maybe not as good. But it's part of this whole Northern Realms push in the direction of Cursed archetype. How does everyone feel about this card and that archetype in general?
Well, the first thing to note is that there's like 4 different translations for this ability. I don't know if you guys know that, but when they revealed it in like 4 different languages, it said 4 different things. So we kind of don't really know exactly what they want to do with this card. And I mean, honestly, given that, I expect it to come down a tiny bit in terms of power.
Yeah.
Because right now, as a last play finisher, you hit every unit. In some translation, it was every unit on the board. In others, it was only cursed unit. It's kind of difficult to set this card right now. But overall, the design of the card and the whole card itself looks really, really, really good. Because it brings something new. It's not something old and washed up. Just buff a card or whatever. It's really cool. It's one of my favorite cards right now. If
I love the ability.
With the artwork and the premium one, it looks so fucking awesome.
Yeah, and spawning Ragnarok is cool too. It's kind of a complaint in the game. Maybe it's not the most graphically pleasing to the eye, but just throwing more of these effects out. And we know more of these kind of graphical effects are coming, but I really like that they put Ragnarok for this one. And again, very flavorful for the card art. And
Yeah, it fits it super well.
I'm sure the lore that I have no idea about, but someone will tell me.
It's from The Witcher 2. Wasn't it the human form of Draught?
Yeah, he turned into Draug.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just him.
Fun fact: the art for Kedweni Sergeant was supposed to be Vandergrift. Like in the game files, it's called Vandergrift.
Oh, really?
Interesting. What do we think of playability of this card, and I guess Cursed in general? Just taking, I guess, the text as we see it here.
Overall, if we don't look at Skellige and the bears right now, I think I'm most excited about seeing Curse, because we have a lot of juicy cards so far, and especially, we didn't mention it, but the Curse Knight, it looks really promising, and I'm really excited about seeing the bear deck, the Cursed Northern Realms deck, and maybe if we see some better monster card, even the Beast, the Cursed Relict monster deck.
Yeah, I mean the Cursed Knight will single-handedly shut down Iris, which is pretty funny.
I mean, I think. Sorry, go ahead, Randy. You go.
I think the card might be playable even outside of Cursed, right? Because the power level is just so high.
Yeah, but this one we still don't know really what is it going to hit. Is like
Yeah,
Chronos
right,
effect,
right.
or but if it stays like it is on the English version, then it's going to be playable in any deck. Like you slam it on the board, you play at least 18, 20 points plus a weather effect, which is really, really powerful.
Yeah, I mean it's like Hefty Helga on steroids.
Right.
I mean, to be honest with you guys, I don't think this card is maybe as good as it seems. It's got a few weird things going for it. I mean, first of all, it's the big if is non-cursed enemies, right? And
Yeah.
we see a lot of cursed units in a lot of factions. I
That's
mean,
true as well.
Skellige, even monsters are getting their werewolves now. Another kind of funny thing too is that you want to play the effect of dealing 1 to all enemies at the end of a round, right? When most units are out there. But then applying Ragnarok, you kind of want to get that going early as possible, right?
Exactly.
For some damage. So it creates this weird dynamic where if you want the weather, you want it early, or if you want the damage, you're doing it late. Probably what's going to happen is you just play the slate anyway, and Ragnarok is like a nice 4 points at the end of the game or something. But
I gotta say, I completely agree with that, Shu.
yeah, I mean, it looks very good on paper, but I think it might not be the best. Just for those reasons.
We've seen a bunch of cards in Gwent that look really good on paper until you kind of like think about them in that way. And I agree. I think this might be one of those, but it really depends exactly how it gets released because like the little variations with the translations, these things do really matter. For
Right.
sure.
Yes.
At the very least, in this form, I think it's inconsistent. I think that's fair to say.
Yes.
You were saying
And of
something?
course, it kind of bricks itself in round 3 as well.
Yeah, that too. Just 6-point gold, pretty bad.
Yeah, royalty tree is probably a must, and even if you play it in a machine deck, ping everything really low just to get the Ragnarok as early as possible. You have always the possibility to drop it either early to apply the weather effect, or just play it as late as possible and take the Ragnarok ability is like 2 more damage because it pings at least once. If you play it at the end and your opponent's turn is the last turn, then you get at least 1 ping off, which is 2 more damage for this card.
Yeah, the best way to use it as a finisher for the ballistas for sure. I think it's pretty much only if you use it in that way, then this card kind of might be too strong.
Do you guys think it says if a unit is destroyed, apply Ragnarok to the row? Do you think that applies for all units killed, or is it a Tremors thing where it's only one shot that you get at that?
It should be all units killed.
If it's all rows, that might actually be pretty good then. Kind of like Ragnarok on a stick with a kind of condition, but
Yeah.
you throw it into machines, a few machines in your deck or something, it might not be too hard to get that off.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It should be Ragnarok on every row, I think. If it kills a unit on each row, that is.
Yeah, right. I think that's the idea of the card. That you have to ping stuff, and then to each row where you kill something, right? I think that's the idea, and that's like super fun, right?
Yeah.
Fun.
This could be insane with Bloody Baron, actually. Just destroy swarm decks.
Yeah.
But again, I guess it's a meta thing if they're popular enough. But cool design, though. Very cool.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, well, that's about all I had to share, unless you guys had some other cards that you really wanted to talk about.
All right. Think Swim has to start his stream in a second. Too.
Yeah, I'm going live literally right now, guys.
Ah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, chat,
Yeah.
what's up? How's everyone doing?
Well, no. It's just my intro screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Tell the chat I said what's up later.
I'll be sure to let them know.
But yeah, that's all I had on the topic list anyway. So why don't we do wrap ups and plugs? Let's start with Randy. Where can everyone find you, man?
You can find me on Twitch as twitch.tv/RandyOfCentral. I've recently started streaming a bit, even though I'm already taking a break because I'm fairly burnt out currently, but I will definitely start again with the new patch, I think. So yeah, you can find me there. And yeah.
How about you, Back to Kill? You're streaming a lot recently, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to stream a lot, even when I'm one of the few full-time streamer and worker at the same time. But you can find me on Back to Kill X on Twitch and on Twitter. If not streaming, then Mimi.
And Swim, man, how about you? What do you want to plug for anyone living under rocks?
Don't look me up. You're better for it.
All right. Well, Swim's too modest. I'll tell you guys. Go check out what he's doing over on the stream. Check him out in Challenger. He's doing a lot of great stuff for the community, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks.
For me, you could find me streaming on Twitch. Hit me up on Twitter. Also, check out the Gwent City YouTube page. A lot of cool content over there. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.